Hello, people of this planet Earth. We're going to be talking about the best North American organization in the history of existence, better than Pepsi, Coca Cola, and Sprite. But they are sponsored by Dr. Pepper, no other than TSM. So, having watched TSM for a very long time and seeing the point where they're at now, it's very interesting to the point where they're at actually. They had Mithy and Sven come over this year. They said they wanted to do a lot of things in North America, and then bam, just today they're actually splitting up, and a lot of things are going to go on. So let's go over what TSM can improve, and let's pretty much break down their roster as well as go over problems they've had and things that they could actually improve on. So, anything you're going to want to specifically say before we start?
Uh, I honestly I don't know how we're gonna approach this without just being kind of
Mean.
well. I don't know if it's gonna be mean.
I'm good looking.
Possibly.
Shut up. There you go.
Shut up.
All right. So before we break down the roster, we're gonna have to look at some sort of history, because this is a problem. The problem I've always had with them is that they've always had problems with their junglers. They've always had problems with their supports. I do believe the whole warding TSM ward thing is a joke.
I don't know if they've always had problem with support. They've had some pretty strong supports throughout their history.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
But it's more like just been a jungle situation, but it's jungle first and then support. And then because at first it was top lane.
I think it's jungle than top lane, honestly.
Yeah.
If I'm gonna have to put anything.
And then support could be one of those tie for second type things. So because their issue, a big one, a lot of people always point out, is the Bjergsen 4 ward thing. I'm just kind of just say I'm joking when I'm saying that, but some people are actually being truthful and say that. Okay, so Bjergsen does control what they do. They can play the game on their own. It's kind of a thing people do in the game. A jungler has his own mind and plays how he wants to play. I just don't put that out there. Okay, so they always try to do the same thing. They have been a consistently slow team since, I don't know, forever. They've actually always played the same way. If you go back and watch 2013 games, even then you'll see glimpses of that. So they've never really been one to adapt to the meta. They've only adapted to the meta in terms of champions and things that you have to do, otherwise you'll just fail at completely. Internationally, people know that they do not adapt, but they do thrive in late game metas, if that even counts anymore. It hasn't been a late game meta since 2017 though. So,
which was only last year. So you mean last season, except for this season?
Heck yeah. Here you go. And they've had a problem with the biggest thing, which is shot calling. Now, the article they talked about Smoothie with was that they brought him for his in-game voice, recognition. So, we've seen a lot of times they don't actually use the shot caller to the fullest extent. 2016 Yellow Star is a big one that knocks in my head. Biofrost never really got a time to shot call after having experience for almost a year. And yeah, you look at Mithy. In a TSM Legends episode, he said, if I can't shot call, his own words, not mine, if I can't shot call, how can I improve? And he was like, so what really can you do as a support? And your main thing is to shot call, give information, play make, and all this other stuff. If no one's listening to you, your calls are going on deaf ears. And then you have junglers over the past couple of years that have just been, just useless after a certain period of time. I don't really know what I'm going. We've seen consistent things. So what makes it so different this year? Do you think anything's going to change at all this year with this new roster? This is the same stuff they say every single year before. I keep in mind you. So
they don't say that. I don't think they say the same thing every year, but I do think they've made
it's worded very similar.
It's definitely similar. I do think the biggest problem that TSM's had throughout their entire existence, even with Reginald, honestly, is they relied solely. What I'm going to say, they put most of the resources solely in mid lane. So essentially, what they're doing is they let mid lane essentially do what they want, which is honestly a good thing to do with Bjergsen. Bjergsen's a great laner. I think he's good at what he does. But I think for most of the pack, the fact is, I think that on top of the fact that they funnel their resources and most of their jungle attention goes there, I think that he has an extremely large voice on the team, and that gives way too much of the attention in mid lane. It kind of starts making your side lanes puts them in a lacking situation, is what I would say. I think they're in a situation where they're not. It's not only that they're not getting funneled the resources, they're not getting the jungle attention, they're not getting essentially... most of the decisions are revolving around what can we do mid, from what I've seen throughout this entire team's existence.
I think too many resources go mid to the point where, if someone else better that they don't even try to utilize could use those resources, they could get them too.
What I'm saying is, I think that the biggest problem with this team is it's always been the team, it's always been the problem. I think that Bjergsen has too large of a voice. I think that he has too large. He's the best player. He's been the best player since he's been on that team. But I think he's always had too large of a voice for his own good. I think that Although I like some decisions he makes, I think he should be a secondary shot caller. I feel like I think sometimes his ego's too big for him to take the back seat as the shot caller. Because obviously at this point it hasn't worked out. If it's still the same shot calling, which I think it is, then I think he has to realize that I should not be the shot caller. What he should be doing is taking a similar role to what like Faker does. Faker does not shot call. Faker plays. Faker plays and kills
plays
people.
the game and wins.
And then the rest of the team essentially, what he does is he fills in the gaps to what they need. They don't tell him what to do, but more so is they say what they're gonna do, and then Faker comes in and he does his own thing.
Yeah, he kind of follows them on what
he kind of helps them. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what I would say is I think he should learn to go into a situation where he should take the back seat, essentially do what he does good, which is laning and everything in the game. And I think he should stop he should stop what's it called? Like, he should stop trying to, like, just have such a firm grasp on, like, just the rotations.
He has to have a firm grasp on. He's trying to be like a version of High, where he controls, like, the macro, the shot calling.
And another weakness of this team.
The gameplay, you know, stuff like that. The calls, stuff. There's certain players that have the ability and to do that. But the reason why you'd want to do that for support is because the support is going to have more, I'm saying more of a support mechanics.
I think
supports have a more relaxed time and can do that a lot more easier than a mid laner traditionally can, based on how, you know, tough the mid lane can be for some people.
I want to put it out there. I think that the best role to shot call from is almost, like, I'm going to put 65%, I'm going to think is top lane. I think top lane is the best role to shot call from. That's why
I'd say jungle.
I don't think jungle should ever shot call.
Really?
I think that jungle has too much path. They should be ganking. But they have too much time trying to figure out what the other jungler is doing. You can call him for the mid lane's help.
Yeah, once you're calling for your jungler, you get to the point where it's like.
Yeah, I don't really like teams that centralize themselves around a jungling shot calling. But for the most part, I think the biggest thing, what I think is wrong with TSM, is their inability to kind of focus on the side lanes, more so top lane than anything. Top lane, since their existence, has kind of been put on an island to where they don't die, and essentially they leave him out. They don't help him ward for the most part, and they don't go gank him, and they kind of put him in a situation where if you don't die, we can win, but if you do die, we lose. So essentially he has to fight the jungler and the laner, and they don't he's in a weakened point where the enemy team for the most part knows that he's not going to get attention, so they focus that lane. So what I think the biggest problem with this team, like if they don't get to the point where I think they kind of help. Like if they keep leaving the top lane out on an island, in a situation like with Dyrus was known for this. Like, I think at the end of his career it was kind of mostly his fault, but for the most part I think that Dyrus was in a situation where, hey, if they gank him, he's gonna be put behind it, and it makes him look bad. And it kind of covers over the fact of what the actual problems of the teams are. Yeah. Like you need to acknowledge the top side of the map. They've had good top laners throughout their career. I think top lane's been one of their stronger suits throughout, like, the existence of Dyrus. Dyrus was great at the beginning. Then they replaced him with Haunter.
He was a literal Band-Aid situation that they were trying to cover up to put a bigger problem that was already rising up.
Yeah, I think they blamed him for it, but I think the problem is they've had strong top laners from Dyrus to Haunter, and now they have Broken Blade, who I think is going to be strong. I don't know yet, but if they don't acknowledge the fact that this should be your secondary carry, if you look at what your team looks like, I think that Sven is strong, but Sven is honestly a late game scaling character, and that's his best quality. You get him ahead in lane, it's good, and he's probably going to be able to carry the game from there, but I think, for the most part, I think that he's going to do better if you more so help him ward. And then kind of leave him, just make sure the jungle, if you think a jungler is going to come, I think you should go counter gank, but he's more so a lane, he's not going to lane dominate the lane. I think he's a good laner, but I don't think he's a lane dominant ADC, so, on the other side, I think that Bjergsen and Broken Blade were last split. I think that if you kind of funnel your resources into the top side, in the top side of the half for a little bit, not resources, because you have to give 80 CS to Sven because he's amazing. But I think that if you kind of funnel your time and effort into the top side of the half, this is where you're going to get the most success. Because I think if Bjergsen learns how to help his jungler rotate around the map, if that is his biggest fault, is his inability to help his jungler rotate.
Just ungodly, almost
I don't think he's terrible. I think
roaming is the issue.
I think it's an issue. I think people over exaggerate because I do think he does put in the effort to roam sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that his biggest problem is that he doesn't help his jungler. His jungler, like even if you're not rotating, at least help your jungler take priority. He pushes the lane a lot.
Yeah, he gets the. Okay, so what they kind of value in the LCS that they've kind of valued for a long time is that, just most regions in general, is that when you have the push, if you're able to push someone in, then you get the advantage because now you have an option to do something. So it's really, and if you have an aggressive jungler, that even pairs up better because now you have an aggressive jungler, and now you have a mid lane champion that pushed away. So you should be able to make the first move.
100%. I think that's the biggest thing. Like why I've always agreed with their jungle choice and not their implementation of how they use them is that Bjergsen has always been one of the strongest laners in the Western scene, and yet they keep pairing him with these aggressive junglers, and it's a good idea. It is like you have this dude who's gonna dominate the lane, and then he could rotate with the jungler, like counter jungle, or kind of help him gank the top lane or bot lane. But they don't tend to do that. Like essentially, he dominates the lane and then recalls, dominates the lane, sometimes ganks. But I don't. For the most part, I think he just sits in lane for too much.
I think that was a problem for them in the 2017 World Championship. Sat lane way too much. Everyone's roaming around him. He's just sitting there.
I think the biggest problem with 2017 was everybody else.
They needed to beat Flash Wolves to get out of the group.
Well, I think that the entire team around him was terrible. It was disappointing.
At that point in time.
At that point in time, I think that all of them disappointed. Like there was not a single performing member beside. I think Hanser played well, and I think Bjergsen played well, and everybody else was a complete disappointment.
And then now you get so we jungle support. Someone's gonna probably ask what other complaints that are valid for them. You could say coaching. I still don't really think that's the issue.
They've had good coaches, and I honestly think their drafting phase.
I thought Song was a fine coach.
Yeah, he was. Their drafting phase has never been the problem.
They're drafting to the strengths.
They are.
They have flexible players in every position. I think synergy might be a problem, like in terms of the actual players themselves might not be able to mesh with some people. Don't understand. Certain people just aren't going to be friends with each other.
It's not about being friends.
Life.
It's even if you're not friends, I think that it could still work out.
Yeah.
What I think the problem is that even though I think Bjergsen's a cool guy to talk to, I think he might have a polarizing play style, which could make not everybody,
but
more so.
He really does kind of play like Season 3 Faker, sit in lane, beat the crap out of someone, and then translate from there.
Yeah, but Faker honestly still dominated. He dominated enough to where essentially it didn't matter what happened.
It was essentially a 4v5.
But that was the stylistic choice of the meta back in Season 3. You could 1v9.
Yeah.
But I think the problem now is I think that so essentially they're doing the right thing.
And the playing scared thing. They play scared a lot. They play very passive and they play scared.
I think they're playing for late game, which is kind of something I can respect.
But the problem is that's the thing with adapting. They have not adapted.
I think a late game scaling can still work if you play passive and then succeed at it.
Mm-hmm.
I think the problem was that they were playing passive and then still dying, which is kind of stupid.
I just never got to the point where it's like, why grab shot callers and not listen to them?
Yeah, I do like top lane shot callers, but they've grabbed some successful support shot calling that I think should have worked out.
If Smoothie doesn't work out, doesn't make sense. Smoothie's been a top 8 of Worlds, a couple NALCS finals. Biofrost said he couldn't really do it because there was veterans on the team that would do it for him. I mean, Yellowstar had no voice on the team. It doesn't matter if Yellowstar sucked. If he's not shot calling, which is a strong suit, then...
Yeah. Let's think about the shot calling throughout TSM's career. It's, first of all, the first 3 seasons, Reginald. Reginald was always the shot caller. It's been acknowledged. And he was honestly the dominator. He was one of the better mid laners in the Western scene. Again, I mean, not the Western scene, sorry, the NA scene. Sorry, E was actually just too far ahead at that point. But... he was one of the better mid laners, and he was the shot caller of that team. All decisions revolved around him. And then when Bjergsen came in, Bjergsen essentially took on the same role as him. And then I think that
they had a special at 1.2. I think Lust Boy.
My knowledge of what the scene was, not this the TSM situation was. I don't think I have enough knowledge to behind the scenes, but from what I can see, I think they took on a shared situation with the shot calling, with Dyrus and bot lane and mid lane kind of chipping in, and the overwhelming. I think that Dyrus was probably the shot caller for a little bit, for the first 2 seasons. I would say. I think that was their when they succeeded, and then after Dyrus's kind of decline, I think that Bjergsen took on the overwhelming. He's the shot caller now. I think that he took on the shot calling needs of the team, and It worked out for a little bit. It did. I think that's kind of what's keeping him doing it because he remembers success. So he essentially was the shot caller of that team. They were succeeding for a little bit, even though I think that it wasn't more so succeeding
I
success.
think it's also more Cloud9 not really performing up to standards in the clutch situations that they needed to perform too.
Yeah. So and then when they replaced
half the team after season
with
5.
Dyrus, they replaced Dyrus with a Haunter, and they got bot lane. They essentially brought in Doublelift, who I assume Doublelift's always been an integral part of the shot calling system, and I think at this point he tried to be the shot caller with Bjergsen. On top of the fact
Which worked out quite well. They won.
No, we still got a situation where we're still in spring split, and I think when they brought in Yellowstar too, they have three voices who I assume are fighting for control of the team, and that is why during the summer, that's the biggest reason why it didn't work out
in the spring. Yeah.
But yeah, that's a big reason why they got rid of Yellowstar. They don't need a third voice, even though I think he was probably the best shot caller on the team. They don't need a third voice,
and they did get to the finals.
Yeah.
It did work out at a certain point.
Yeah. So now they got rid of Yellowstar, and they bring in Biofrost, who is 100% not going to shot caller.
He said they didn't even need to.
Yeah, he's a rookie, and there's two people on the team who are going to shot call because they know their regional success.
Mm-hmm.
They know that they want to be the shot caller. So essentially, what they have now is a team that is focused solely around Doublelift and Bjergsen, fighting for control. Essentially, I think they fought for and not at this season 5. Or season 6. Season 6. I think this was their most successful year. I think this is probably the best NA team of all time. I know that's going to get me a lot of slack, but in my opinion, season 6, TSM was the best NA team of all time.
And they won 3 titles?
Yeah. But then they get to the Worlds, and essentially what they have now is they underperformed. I think this is where the problem started to show. I think that the shot calling system where 2 main shot callers doesn't work out. It'll never will.
Bjergsen was... But even the problem people factor in, when Bjergsen was sick that week, they were still 2-1. Now Bjergsen is better in week 2. And that's where the problem comes in. Because Bjergsen can't talk in week 1. Because he said he was sick, he literally couldn't say a word.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. I think essentially we have a situation where they're fighting better. They're honestly fighting better teams. I think that they could.
But they were kind of standing up.
I think they could have beat RNG. I think they should have beat RNG. To be honest, I think they should have beat RNG out because they were weak all around the map besides Uzi. I think they had them beat out in everywhere besides bot lane.
Mm-hmm.
And even bot lane, I know that
Uzi crushed them. Oh my god.
Yeah, bot lane is way better than them, but I feel like that's still a good lane. Bjergsen, Doublelift Biofrost is a good lane. I think that should have worked out if anything. It did not because of the fact that they have a situation where they're they
also said they were trying out team comps. Why are you trying out different team comps at Worlds is beyond me. When you already that can be considered with adapting, but that shouldn't be what they were attempting to anyway. But then you get to a situation where it doesn't work out. Then it goes to 2017 spring,
and then
I still Cloud9 really should have won that finals. The Jensen misplay. It was a very close series, all things considered. But then you get to a point they're at MSI 2017 with Faker and SKT, G2 has perks, and Flash Wolves are looking good, and then you have World Elite coming up too.
I think that the biggest
atrocious. It looked seriously horrible.
What happened?
They looked seriously horrible at MSI.
The only reason WE?
No, TSM. Oh. The only reason why TSM didn't make it is because G2 just played a slightly bit better than them. I think we're gonna get flack for that, but they played a tiny bit better.
It wasn't just a tiny bit better. They had a function, man. They walked around the map with.
Well, at least
with a
G2
reason.
had a plan. They're like, well, we can't win early game, so we're just gonna win late game. Well, TSM had no plan.
TSM had a plan. They were gonna try and survive. They were trying to dominate the early game, and then honestly, they thought they could just win later on, but they just couldn't. They couldn't dominate any of these people, and then they essentially without the laning phase that they kind of were beating people out on. Yeah, they just fell apart. They did not know what to do.
To be fair, they did get to a tiebreaker scenario.
I don't care.
But you got to factor in the game where they could have beaten G2 to go 2-0 against G2 to make it out of the group stage. They were 10,000 gold ahead. They're on the inhibitors. How do you can't throw harder than that? That's a throw. Bjergsen said they should have 2-0'd them. Yes, you probably should have, but then you get to a scenario where you have to face Flash Wolves, and Flash Wolves is a fast-paced team. And Flash Wolves are not going to let you do late game. After 2017, don't they win? They win the spring split for summer, right? Yeah, they do, because they beat them Morals in the finals. That group stage, it's just going to come up the wire. Like I said before, Flash Wolves are 0-5. If TSM beats Flash Wolves in that second time around, then they get out of the groups because World Elite ends up beating Misfits TSM gets out of the group. They didn't do that. They just a tiebreaker scenario. Tiebreaker scenario, 2 years in a row, they pick Ryze mid lane and Jace top. But I digress. And then now we're at this year. So, I mean, 2018, everybody's already seen everything in 2018. What do you think their biggest problem was in 2018?
They replaced Doublelift with Sven, which I don't think was a bad trade at all. They replaced Biofrost with Mithy, which is stupid. I think Biofrost. The thing about it is they replaced the other the other large voice on the team, and they implemented another one with Mithy. And I think that this again they're fighting for control of the team, and this time Bjergsen is just not relenting. He's not letting anybody take control. He's just fighting. He's saying, I'm going to be the shot caller, and Mithy just has no choice. Mithy, so we have a situation where Mithy is just, his weakness is everything besides shot calling. But they put him on a situation where he's not allowed to shot call because Bjergsen won't let him. This is all what I think. Again,
this is all evident in episodes of their own show.
Yeah, but
this is not just like we're talking out of our heads. This is evident.
Yeah, I don't see enough of their shot. Their what's it called to actually know 100%.
Well, Greg was trying to give his he was trying to feed information too.
You should always feed information. I don't think that makes you not a shot.
But people gave him slack because they said like games where he was ahead, he didn't carry them.
So I think the biggest problem with this team is 100%. I have to put it on the fact that they didn't let Mithy shot call.
Oh again, yeah, being indecisive too.
And then they didn't. Again, the jungler was just weak. That was just a weak jungler.
I do think this is the best jungler fit they've had in a while for that specific style that they play.
I think he's been the worst jungler though. I think
worst but best in terms of what you need.
I still think that every jungler before this would have been a better player on the team. Even though he plays a good play style for TSM, I think he's been just underperforming all over. I think he's a rookie, so I'll give him some slack. Maybe he improves next year for the.
Yeah, he's not a rookie. He was on Echo Fox in 2016 for a whole year.
Was he really?
Mm-hmm. He was a jungler. Remember? He was playing with Hard in the top.
Oh, you're right. Okay,
he's
well,
not. He's not. People forget he's not a rookie.
He essentially is a rookie because that team didn't count.
Don't count Keith and Froggen as a team.
Don't badmouth Froggen, man. Froggen's actually good.
God.
But for the most part, I think that Grig for the most part is a rookie. He did not play for the most of 2017. He did play in 2016, but I think that gap where he was on a team that didn't perform well, he's never had success, so he doesn't know how to translate that onto the stage.
But him having a voice on the team, I mean,
I think
it's only gonna go so far.
He's not gonna talk louder than these dudes. So essentially, you have a top laner, who I think is just.
Broken Blade is probably not gonna.
I think we're talking about 2018.
Oh yeah, 2018. Yeah.
So I think that Haunter essentially again was left out to dry in a situation where he can't succeed in this meta.
But Grig did gank for him a lot. Actually,
Grig did gank for him, but I think that the most part was that Grig, like the proximity was still around.
We forgot
Grig.
something.
What's up?
We forgot Mike Young.
I don't care about
Mike.
Young.
Oh yeah. Okay, so they bring in an aggressive jungler with Mike Young and.
I mean, he wasn't on the team.
The same scenario happened.
What I'm saying is he wasn't on the team long enough for me to really need to acknowledge him.
But I mean, if we're gonna go with that's
okay.
Not gonna work out.
Essentially, they brought in another aggressive jungler, and
didn't work.
Their problems still are evident. They don't know how to play against with aggressive junglers because
it's also been proven that you cannot pair 4 rookies and a vet. At least in the jungle position, you cannot pair 4 veterans and a rookie jungler. It just does not work because he doesn't know how to be guided in those situations.
So we have essentially a situation where Haunter is struggling in a meta which has honestly been throughout the entire year focused essentially around top lane. Mm-hmm. I think that top lane has been the more dominant lane throughout the entire season. So I think that though like it just seemed like for the most part most of their jungle proximity was towards the top side of the half this year, but I think that again they didn't implement it well is what I would say. I think they started like when their success started showing through. They it was you remember they went through that big like 7-0 run at the end of Spring Split. Mm-hmm. That was when they started like focusing essentially like mostly around top lane. Like that was where their ganks were coming from. That was where most of their success was coming from. And I think that's when Mithy started taking a like more of a secondary shot calling role. Or yeah, I don't know who was the shot caller at that point, but even though I don't like Bjergsen as a shot caller, you have to if he's not going to relent, you have to give it up. You just need one shot caller. You can't fight. So essentially, they have a situation where they're succeeding because I feel like the kind of the role of the team is kind of forming.
Yeah,
and I thought they were gonna like dominate they looked
a pretty much solidified way we're gonna play now.
So I think that during the summer, spring, just the regular season, I think they looked like the best team in NA by the end of it. It was between them and 100 Thieves. So now we get to the playoffs, and I don't know what happened. I honestly don't know why their team just fell
Sven
apart.
says ban Thresh. You know what they do? They let Thresh go every single game.
What I'm saying is,
I still don't think Thresh is that. People don't understand Thresh is not that big of a champion to do that, but if that's
Thresh is a ridiculously overpowered champion. If the support is on fire, you need to ban him. If the support is just destroying you, you need to realize that.
He says in the video, he's like, ban Thresh, and I think we're good. Let's Thresh go every single other game.
What I'm saying is,
and then they lose.
Yeah, what I'm saying is, I think that if Hawk was on fire at this point, I think you need to acknowledge the fact that this person is just going to consistently
be disrespectful like that and not ban it.
Yeah. So what I think is the problem is that I think that bot lane essentially got beat down. Bot lane underperformed 100%. I think that kind of translated into the rest of the map, and that kind of, for the most part, I think that if they're not, like, I think that Apollo and Hako were going off at this point. Bjergsen is matched. Bjergsen's matched at this point, and I think he's a little...
Yeah, Febivin is not someone who's going to lose to him.
He's not going to lose. So essentially their strength in mid lane is just gone.
It's neutralized now.
Yeah. And then you have top lane, who I honestly think it would probably go in Hanser's favor, so it did. I do think that still went in his favor. But for the most part, you're losing around the map now. Losing around the map.
Now you lost everywhere. And Mike Young can't translate because he doesn't know what to do because he's still kind of a rookie himself.
I think that the only reason this went so lopsided in Clutch Gaming's favor was just the amount of like Apollo and Hako don't usually play that well. That was a very good day for them. That was a very great day for them, and I think that just kind of made TSM just fall apart.
But this year for TSM was different. Now the whole recency of 2018 is kind of still there. You factor in this year's different. This year, because people factor in, even though they had these problems in other years, they still made finals. They still made semifinals. This year, it was a struggle for them to get out of the quarterfinals. A struggle. They lost quarterfinals in spring and almost lost to quarterfinals to Echo Fox in the summer. Now, you can chalk that up to narratives for teams changing because of just, orgs getting better, they getting better players, more funding, stuff like that, which is fine. But overall, this is their worst year. You can't say there've been a worse year than this because even though in their other bad years, at least if they failed out of Worlds, they still at least made the finals of the NALCS. This year they didn't even make the finals. This is the first year they played in a third place match.
What I'm going to say is at least they made Worlds every year.
Yeah.
This is the first year they didn't. I think that the biggest problem revolved around underperforming bot lane because I think Mithy just essentially this is essentially Yellow Star 2.0 in my opinion for TSM. You have a shot calling support who you're not letting shot call, so his weaknesses are just prevalent. You have Sven who's playing with an underperforming support, so he can't look as strong, even though I do think he was still performing well. You have Bjergsen, who I think was probably one of his worst years. Mm-hmm. I don't think he looked very strong this year, even though I still think he was one of the top mid laners in NA. And then we have top lane and jungle. I think that jungle was just obviously a weakness. Jungle just
the whole year.
Yeah. And then we have top lane, who I think
technically was a weakness.
Spring split, he looked fine. Summer split, he looked.
That's why I give him the technicality.
Yeah, I just think more so is the rotations, like the what's it called? The priorities of the teams kind of shifted from top lane. That's why I think he looked poor. But we're going into this season, and now they replaced Hanser, who I don't think was a problem with Broken Blade.
Oh yeah, right. So at the point, guys, we're kind of breaking down their newest roster.
Yeah. So Broken Blade, I think is extremely talented. I think he's going to be a good fit into this team, and I think he's going to be better than a Hanser.
I think that if he doesn't perform better than, like I said, top 3, it was a useless role to play.
So we have Broken Blade, who I think is going to perform well. I think we have Greg still, which is really disappointing.
A supportive jungler to an aggressive top laner, like I said, I think he's the best fit for them,
I think
not player-wise.
I think his playstyle is fine. His player is not. So I think that all around, I think that jungle's still a weakness. Mid lane is still strong. I don't think Bjergsen's really, besides his last year, I think even with that, I still think he is a top-tier mid laner.
You factor in bot lane's going to be an issue because this is the first year Sven's not played without Mithy. He said on Twitter 350 games, right?
Yeah. So now,
wow.
The thing about it is, in terms of what I think is this team is gonna have, if this bot lane meshes together, it's gonna be one of the best. Sven and Mithy. Sven is smoothie. Sorry, just can't even say.
Yeah, you have Sven, and then you have Drinks.
Haha. But Sven
Jokes.
and Sven and Smoothie are just absolutely just ridiculous players in and of themselves. I think this is a good pairing. I feel like if Sven can make it past his kind of his mental blocks in terms of moving on without Mithy, I think they're going to be a dominant bot lane.
Yeah, because he's had a guy kind of, I don't know. It's weird to say because you could have said Mithy was guiding him, but at a certain point he was kind of just playing on his own. Because most people said Sven would do better without Mithy.
People can say that, and we'll see it in action now because he's without Mithy.
We'll see a lot of these legacy bot lane laners do well without their supports. Hopefully. Bane without Wolf, Smoothie without Sneaky.
Let's put this into a situation where the biggest legacy bot lane, in my opinion, now is Apollo and Hakuo. Because that's all that's left. Everybody else broke up.
When everyone else has retired from league bot laners, and we have a new generation bot lanes, we'll remember Apollo and Hakuo.
The two that just would not split up. Yeah, you're
right. Yeah, the guys that never made it to finals, but they did make it to third place matches.
They did not look bad, but I don't think they're dominant. So the biggest problem with this TSM roster, I think... What?
Definitely in Matt. That is a legacy bot lane. To be reincarnations of Deft and Mata.
Okay. All right.
Pure trolling.
All right, so mid lane is fine. Bot lane is going to be the... If they can fit well together, I think this is going to be...
That's the problem. TSM, the newest roster... prove that if they're not putting people together that aren't friends, it's not working out. Like, it's just not. The other rosters worked out also because they liked each other as people.
This is what's up?
So if let's say the newest roster just aren't cool to each other, like they aren't friends, that's gonna show in the game too.
Honestly, I don't think this is like Gurren Lagann where it's fueled by friendship power.
Friendship wins everything.
Friendship power, yes. But I think that the biggest thing is they could not be friends as long as they can function well inside of a team. You don't need to look for friends. I disagree with that for the most part. I think that they can function well as long as they know what their roles are on the team. I think the problem is you have another shot calling support. So now you have another shot calling support. Okay, whatever that sound was.
Wow, okay, 4 years in a row.
Calm down. All right, so we have a shot calling. What is going on, man?
The shot. Okay, so you know the definition of insanity is trying the same thing multiple times and hoping for a different result.
That is actually correct.
I know, I'm a genius.
I guess.
What is gonna be that's what blows my mind. What is gonna be the difference this year? I've heard it all before. We're gonna try new things. We're gonna try new styles. I've heard it all before. I just want to see it. I'm not gonna believe anything they're gonna say. I just want to see what they're gonna play like.
Well, we have to acknowledge the fact that we have to put into what we think. Okay, let's look at the best scenario. TSM.
Okay, so let's look at draft.
Okay, so draft is fine.
The draft is people. They have flexible laners. Broken Blade I don't know if he can play tanks.
Broken Blade can play everything. He has a gigantic champion pool.
So you have draft cover down. Let's say let's say the gaps of last year.
The gaps of last year, I think top lane is unnecessarily changed. I don't know if it's going to be an upgrade or a downgrade.
They didn't fix jungle.
Jungle is still. They fixed bot lane. I think that's the biggest situation.
So they fixed the gap. The draft is fine. The macro is going to be different.
The macro, essentially, I think that Bjergsen said that he respects Smoothie. So in my mind, in what I want to happen, I think that he is going to listen to Smoothie. In reality, it's probably not going to happen like that. Reality is just Bjergsen is just too much of a. You got some stuff going on right now, don't you?
I'm mind baffled at how much this team irritates me.
So, but I think the biggest thing is I think that these two more voices. I think that if this functions in a way where Bjergsen takes the step back because he respects Smoothie as a shot caller, I think this team is gonna go to Worlds 100%.
And then you can get the memes again. TSM failing out of groups.
I'm fine with that as long as they make it to Worlds. They're not a complete disappointment.
Yeah, because people got to factor in this is the worst year they've had. I'm not even. The other bad years, yes, those are visible issues, but at least you still made the finals. You know, at least you still made At least you made it through playoffs, essentially. This year was just, man. I mean, eventually it was going to happen no matter what. You just don't expect it to happen in spring. You also don't expect it to happen during Worlds time. You at least expect them to go to Worlds. Like, they lost their Worlds streak, and this is an off year for them, but...
all around, I think this is just, in my opinion, it might let's think. Bot lane. In my opinion, this might just be a weaker version of Season 6 TSM. If you want my honest opinion. If the shot calling works in the favor this year and it goes as I really want it to, I think this could be a stronger, but for the most part, I don't see them being better than Season 6.
I don't see them being better.
They're weaker in most every position, except for maybe top lane. We'll have to see.
Well, because if you had so let's say if you put like S in A tier, would you put them like let's see if you had Liquid in S tier, would you put TSM in A tier with like Cloud9 and 100 Thieves?
If I see them succeeding in the way I would,
or just on paper.
On paper, I don't think Team Liquid has a definite enough. Like I think they're the best macro team last split. But I don't think their macro's amazing.
No, if you're just ranking them just on paper.
I know what I'm trying to give a reason as to. So I'm saying essentially, Their biggest problem last split was I think they relied solely on macro and kind of essentially what that was most of their playstyle was we out macro most of the NA teams. And I honestly think, although it worked in NA, I think that's most of the teams didn't rely on macro besides 100 Thieves, and even them, they stopped. So essentially, they're the only macro-oriented team, which is why they dominated the scene. So I think that with the if this works out in TSM's favor, I think they could beat. I could think they could beat out.
So you would kind of rank them in S tier as well.
I would put them at least in high E tier, if this works out as much as I think it might.
Because like I would go TL is just going to be A tier on its own, and I think like
S tier.
TSM. Oh yeah, S tier, and I think that TSM, Cloud9, or 100 Thieves will be like A tier.
I don't.
You have like B tier, which is probably going to be like the teams that are going to fight for 3rd through 5th, and then you have like Golden Guardians, which is going to be like C tier.
I think that they don't really have definitive weaknesses, and TL doesn't. But I do think that we're going to have to see how these things gel together. We have extremely aggressive laner in Core JJ, and somebody who just I don't think is going to do. He is still a good laner, but I don't think he's as dominant.
You gotta figure this is a new team after 3 years.
We have a lot of people getting replaced on this roster, and I don't know. I don't know how it's gonna gel together, but I think on paper they should be the best NA team.
That's pretty much it. That pretty much covers our TSM 2019 roster breakdown. Kind of a recap before that.
It was more of a recap than anything.
So we'll call that what the problems of TSM, and then we'll recap of the problems of TSM. And breakdown of their newest spring roster.
A lot of words. I think I'm just gonna say Bjergsen sucks with exclamation points and
I
see
think
how
Bjergsen
much.
should make out with Sneaky.
Okay, let's not do that. All right. So
Also, I also think that Phoenix, you deserve better than Echo Fox.
I don't know, man. Rick Fox is a stud, man. I can't hate them. I just like him too much.
When Echo Fox cut him, he was like, "I want everyone to win except for Echo Fox."
And then he joins them again. So yep, I think that's it for the video. Don't dab. I'm gonna put you in a corner next time you do that, I swear. But
this is my house.
It's really not. It's actually mine.
How do they know that?
Okay.
Well, I just revealed my secret.
Alright, so have a good night or day. And that's gonna be it. Should we say that? No, that's probably it.
Like the video, comment, subscribe
there we
if you
go.
have not. Notification bell, click.
Alright.
Subscribe if you have not, click. Like the video.
Click.
Click.